Hello, and what is up? It is my pleasure to be here with you again today on another episode of What is Going On. I will give a tour. This is our intro screen. This is our topic of the day screen. And our topic of the day is, I forgot. Oh yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do, oops. This one doesn't have music. It's supposed to be creepy and moody. And it is, I think. Do you think it's creepy and moody? This is the period. This is a hypothetical period where you get, let's see, what's this boy been up to? Frog spent decades fighting in the Mystic War. He's over 100 years old by the time Marl finds him in Fiona's shrine. Which has some basis in reality, given that frogs can live for a very long time. Ba-da-da-da-do. Oh, sick. Keep this one. I can go down there. Thank you to Artie Charmy for this picture. And thank you to Mogu Art or let's go back to the box. So we'll get back to that frog thing, but let's continue to tour. We have this, which is a brand new entry in the collection. And this is meant to show off. I'm just going to drop something on you guys right now. I'm just going to drop the Poyozo steak right now, and you'll see what this is meant to show off. And keep in mind that the frog shot, which happens at like 30 seconds in, is not yet done. Everything else is pretty much done. All right, I'm very excited. We're going to show the Poyozo steak. Here we go. So that's what this is. That's why this is on here. Because it's like a lot more overworld involvement. If a game is going to be about questing across the map and sort of perpetual map quest, then the overworld has a bigger part to play. But specifically, let's just go to the Poyozo. Go to this part. All right, so what's happening here is this is actually a sequence. It starts with Chrono in the woods, and he's at level 10. This is what a level 10 lightning would look like. This is an example of dynamic spell growth. So then as he levels up, lightning also levels up. So you don't have lightning 2 anymore. You just have lightning. You don't have lightning aga or like blitzaga or blitzara. You got lightning. You never have to pass lightning 1 or 2 on the menu ever again. If you're at level 99, lightning looks like this. And if you're level 40, it looks like this, which also allows for critical cast of spells, as demonstrated here. So here's your typical level 30 ice spell. And then you can see if there's a little bit more, like it says critical, and there's a little bit more sparks. See? Oh, I'm getting it. There we go. And then that was a 99. But that would allow for critical spell cast as well. If you're constantly casting the same spells, you only have a handful of spells that just get a lot better as you do. It simplifies and it gives you a chance to really add some character to the spell. So that would be one idea. And then here, you've got she's casting Aura, which is a pre-magical tech. If you remember, Aura and Hypno Wave were available before hanging out with Specchio. So these are, I don't really know the name for it, so I just said they're pre-magical tech. They're kind of woo-woo. I mean, without knowing magic, this means that it implies to me that anyone could learn this. So pre-magical tech is teachable to the pre-magic people, which would be the cave people. They can't do anything that has a star. Nothing with a star in the title, because their genome was not changed by Lavos so that they could do magic like everyone else. However, what if I did this? Would you guys hate me if I did this? What's that little rock? What's that rock down there? Oh. What's that? What is that little rock? Are you holding something, Robo? Are you holding Magicite? It's no secret that there's a heavy Final Fantasy VI crossover happening here. Final Fantasy III, as it was called originally, and he should be pretty big, right? He should be like that big, but that looks bad. They came out. What year did Final Fantasy VI, then called Final Fantasy, come out? Then it was called 1994. So it came out before Chrono Trigger. That makes sense because I thought when I saw Terra Cave, then it was going to be like Terra from Final Fantasy. So I leaned into that heavily. because also it affords the opportunity to, let's check out the train. Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Final Fantasy VI. There are some other, like, I don't know if you caught the, here, let's just start with, this. All right, this is Luca's alternate. And we will talk about her for a moment. Okay, this image by Cymorg inspired. Yep, it was this picture. Looks super sweet. So, that's how you get this character, because of this picture. At any rate, here you can see all the variations of Luca pretty much. You've got the one we're talking about here, Guru of Reason. She's down here on the bottom. Hold on, there's actually, that finger that's on the screen is artificial. This is the real finger. Okay. So this is the one we're talking about. This is the one we know, and this is the guest one, which I'll cover in another episode. It's the same one. These two are the same. She and she are the same. However, this one has a much different mindset. And that's why, and that's the first one you meet. This is who you meet when you first meet Luca. And she'll tag along with you and stuff. But then after you do her side quest and get her as a playable character, she throws her helmet back on and you get this one. And I imagine you could still take the helmet off. And then over here we have the ash tier, which would not look like this, but this is a green frozen flame. It would probably not look like the frozen flame, but I did a green frozen flame to demonstrate that it basically is, it's a human-made frozen flame that Luca invents called the ash tier. This Luca, because this Luca knows a lot more about dimensions and stuff like that. For instance, let me show you. In one reality, Tabin ostracized Luca after Lara's death, and she found her purpose as Norstein Beckler's protege. So imagine that Luca gets thrown out of the house when she's little, or just kind of like neglected by her dad so much that she wanders into town to find, something to do. And she runs into Creepo Beckboy. Whoopsies. Hold on, can you see what's happening here in the corner? I've been trying to get him to show up here. So she finds him in town and they start to hang out. And so she knows much more about dimensionality than our Luca. If our Luca's the time guru, this Luca is the dimension guru. She found a way to send Wedge and Biggs back to their home dimension, a place she calls the adjacency. So that's where we're getting on to the Final Fantasy VI stuff. They can't say it's Final Fantasy VI land, and so Luca's name for it is the adjacency. Okay. So why were we talking about that again? Let's move on to the next topic. Oh, back to this. So here you have, pre-magical tech, and that's why you have the Magicite, because you can go to. I was pretty sure that I had. I'll show you. Let's look at this. Here's our cast of characters, and they're in the. They're on a Final Fantasy VI background. Because Final Fantasy VI has some amazing backgrounds. Cannot be understated. Understated? Overstated? It certainly can be stated in some way. I don't know if you can go over or you go under with the state. But we are basically coming back to that in a sec. Because I wanted to show you this. Boom. Now we're talking. See, this is more Ultros. Massive. Massive summons. I think Ultros would actually be a lot, you know, he'd probably be about as tiny as you can get on this map. He's not that big, for sure. So sorry if I upset anyone. But yeah, he would probably even be smaller than this. But this is what his icon on a map would look like for sure. Because you want him to be big enough to see. So imagine you got your squads out there. So you send out like these two on an auto. And that was actually demonstrated in the movie. Why can I not? All right, you send them out to go auto quest and build their level. You're like, all right, we want to go into these woods. And so even though the map would look like this, when you go into the woods and it zooms in, like, let's say that you got you send them to AutoQuest. And so you actually can't see that. You can see this from this view, but you can't see this yet. And you can see this. You'd be like that, I suppose. Dude, what happened to the moose music? Sorry. So you dispatch. You're like, Ayla, Kino, go take the dactyls and go to that portion of the map. We want to get some elements from these woods, or we want you just to build your level. So you auto dispatch them, and they have super simple commands. You know, like you can kind of tell them to play risky, play safe, whatever. But you know that if you send a level 41 party, which would be the average of their two characters, you send a level 41 in there, there's a good chance they're coming back without incident with some equipment and some higher levels. So they get dispatched and they go to the woods. Then the view is going to switch to, it'll look like this. No, it won't look like that. My bad. It'll look like this? Yes, it'll look like this. And you'll have interesting. You'll still have this. And you will also have this. That doesn't look right. Oh, you know what? I know how it would go. All right, not yet. First, it would do like this. It would be like this. All right, we're going to those woods. Oh, that looks so bad because of the resolution. However, this is how it would go. It would be like, boop. So first we have this view. And it's like, okay, here, let's say here is breakwave point. Oh, not this one. Sorry. It would be more like this one? Nope. Never mind. Oh, this is what I wanted to show you the whole time. This part. So here we are. It would be like, wait, let me not get ahead of myself. Let me finish this thought. Sorry, I got distracted there. Okay, so we are in this view. And then, my friends, we change to this view. And Ultros would be quite a bit bigger. Or maybe not, because we were talking about Ultros being small. Let's say he's like that big. In this scenario, I don't really know, like, if Ultros would be friend or foe, amigo or enemigo. But I had in mind that he would be, you know, summons are super special and rare. And it would be like, she would be the one to summon Ultros, for sure. She's got the Final Fantasy VI going on. Because she studied in the adjacency, so she knows all about Final Fantasy VI stuff. She's like a Luca who kind of crossed into a Final Fantasy VI adjacent dimension and learned about it. So she knows about Magicite, she knows about Espers, and she also starts out as a guest as well. Both Lucas will join the party as guests. And so she's got, oh yeah, this is the part I was looking for, bizarre learnings. This Luca picked up some truly exotic tech while under the tutelage of Norstein Beckler. Keep in mind, no one's ever outright saying Final Fantasy VI universe. They never mention anything about the Final Fantasy VI universe. It's never even discussed, but it's there. We don't want to make it like a crossover. We just want to have the influence. But yeah, she's got the metamorph. And also, classic Final Fantasy VI attack, including the mistranslation. So that's your original Meltdown, but they changed it to Merton. So this is a shout out to the reason there's the heavy FF6 influence is because of the time that Chrono Trigger came out, 94 to 95. That's right in the zone. In the middle of those two games coming out is some kind of, you know, historical universal nexus or something. Oh, let's go back to the train. And the train will help us know if we are forgetting anything. Oh yeah, let's look over at all the rest of... I'll play Poyozo Steak again, and then we'll talk about it, but I won't do the music. If I could figure out how to actually do that. Okay, so the intro, you got takes you to 1005 AD, the fall of Guardia, as shown in the incredibly provocative cutscene at the end of the Chrono Trigger re-release. Like, what the heck? So this would be them fleeing the castle. And a lot of people are like, well, you know, what about their power level? And we're going with moral issues. They do have a ton of power, and maybe they could just waste everyone, but, you know, those are actual people. So they're not like trying to outright murder. And the Porians are not taking hostages either. I mean, they're taking hostages. They're not hurting anyone, they're just taking hostages. I don't know how it would work. I don't know the mechanics and everything of it. But I do know that there would be a lot more fire than in this picture. There's some fire. Nice. Alright, so this is them escaping that. And there's just a lot of troops. So Chrono goes down below. At some point, there's going to be enough for story reasons to say that there was enough troops to overwhelm them, at least to separate them. So she's run into the woods. She saw there was a red time gate there. And then she got distracted because troops are coming in from everywhere. And then three guys appear out of nowhere and push her into the gate. And because it's 4 people, they go to the end of time where she throws them over the edge, and then she goes back only to find that 1005 AD is totally different. So she basically pulled a Back to the Future 2, where she got onto a different timeline. And that's okay. It's not ideal, but we also want to talk about how this would be after that. That's chapter 1. Here, this is perfect. Okay, back to this. The one we just saw would be the Fall of Guardia. That's chapter 1. Okay. And then now we're on chapter 2, the Endless Forest. Which I don't know if I like that font with the white stroke up there, but this is chapter 2, Endless Forest. After she goes through the time gate, oh, I skipped a step, but anyway, we're just rehashing. I guess I gotta go through. I'm not gonna go through. Don't worry so much. Okay, let me just explain it then. after she gets back to the end of the time, after the Back to the Future realization that the dimensions were changed, it went from her timeline to this awful timeline. So then she goes back to the end of time. Oops. And Gasper's like, there's a time egg that your friend left in this basket, and he gives it to her. That's been gone over before, but I wanted to just make that clear. So then she ends up in 700, and they throw her in jail because the way she appeared looked like magic, and they think she's a mystic, and right now there's a big hunt for the mystics. So she meets Toma the Third in jail, and he joins the party as a guest character. And that brings us to the train. So at some point they're on a train. And because the opening sequence is like your tutorial, each chapter will teach you something. Like the last one taught the mechanics of fighting again, just the typical fight when you're escaping with Chrono and then get separated. And then you can even go up against a Lavo spawn in that one part. You know, it can come to that even. If you want it to. But also, because it's the training, it's going to tutorial you about how to do like inter-character learning abilities, which is another way of saying that one character can impart knowledge to another character. So even though we know that Princess Nadia knows Ether and High Potion, the game's just going to teach us that that's how you do it in this game. That's how you can exchange tech by doing this. So you're going to know Potion in chapter 1, but then by the time chapter 2 is over, you've learned about High Potion and Ether. And then that cat keeps doing the thing. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Perfect. So you start a new game. And you've got the courtroom start. This is all actually kind of confusing right now. But the start screen looks like this. And I would actually... Sorry. We're going with this. And I'll explain why later. There is a break, B-R-E-K. Or maybe we're going with this. Trippy, bro. Alright. Is it E-A-K? Is it whatever? We're going to say... Okay. Line it up properly. And finally. That looks awful. Chrono Trigger. Okay. But it also kind of looks sweet. Jury's out. Anyway, this is what the title screen would look like. And, oh, we were talking about that. And then you go to the courtroom. And she comes bursting through the glass. This is the fight has already started. They're already under attack. This is all chapter 1. We just saw this, chapter 1. You have a pendant, which reminds me I should put the pendant. That's actually, I'm so glad that, okay. So glad that I remembered that. Okay, then we saw this. Okay, we saw this. So you could fight all through this. You're just learning how to do traditional combat again. 2 characters, Chrono. Chrono gets like they teach you about the forced sort of loss that you have to do, and a couple times in Chrono Trigger you have that forced loss, story loss. So then, yeah, you go back and you're tangling with Lavos spawn within the very first couple minutes of the game. And that is going to be a very, very familiar. That's going to be a super familiar feeling because Lavos spawn are going to be like the treasure trove of enemies on the overworld. And the thing that makes that sweet is because you can, I don't know, tag the shells so that people know that it's your territory. That's what at least you do in 1020 AD. At any rate, lots of Lavos spawn. So she's dealing with that. She's like, you know what? In a traditional playthrough, you're just not going to be leveled up enough to handle that at the moment. New Game Plus is a different story, but most of the time you're going to get to that area and you're also going to learn very quickly about when you approach a opponent that's way, way too strong for you, it's okay to run. And that's a big mechanic of this game because there's a lot of pushing into parts of the map, finding that it's really, really hard, and then pushing back. That's what you get the adaptive difficulty terrain, as we call it. So important story events and stuff are hidden behind basically walls of super hard enemies. You might need to be at level 80 before you can even get into a certain part of the map. Or if you're just a total baller, you could get in at level 60 because you just are so good at doing stuff, or you have New Game Plus things carried over and so forth. But at any rate, let's get to the part. She finds out from Gasper that his theory is that, you know, the Back to the Future thing, that the timeline switched. And so now she's tangentially thrown into a different timeline, which is really important because timeline and dimension are kind of blended in this, as we'll find out. It's only the natural evolution. But anyway, and he tells her that her friend came through some time ago. And so you see this ghostly image of Luca on the side of the screen. And she's being chased by someone and she dropped a Chrono Trigger in the basket. And so he's like, maybe you want to, I don't know, crack that Chrono Trigger? So she does, and she ends up in 700, which is the height of Dalton's empire. So that's where you get chapter 2. That's where you're at. You got thrown in jail because he's not really around, but everyone else is like continuing his war on the Mystics. Let's see, how big would he be? I like doing the sizing. It's fun to size him up and see who would be bigger than who. It'd probably be about the same. I imagine Toma's kind of a big guy, right? Anyway, he actually wouldn't be in this jail cell. He's too good for that. He's actually somewhere else. Too slow. I wanted to do it before the text came up. He's here in 2300. But is he like this? Or is he actually like this? Is that Dalton? If it is, he got a little bit bigger. But what if that's not Dalton? What do you think? I wanted to keep it ambiguous if this thing is actually Dalton or not. Defeat Dalton at Death Peak. Because from this image, you might assume that the Death Peak outside is going to be beyond that door. So maybe this guy is just like, you know, maybe he's just like a lackey for Dalton. Or maybe that thing is Dalton. But at any rate, this is a perfect opportunity to segue into this, which we're going to be working on later. Because we need to in order to sell the potential that this crazy creature is Dalton, we need to give it something. Like, I for one would be a lot more willing to believe that this creature was Dalton if it was like creepily holding that thing. That looks terrible though. And I don't even imagine one of these things would hold a sword. I mean, they're not really... I find it hard to imagine they would hold a sword. But we all know that this scumbag certainly would. Excuse me, let me just get a little bit more rotation on that. Is that it? There we go. So, this is not canon. He might not even look like this by the end. Dalton could be totally different. At any rate, here we are at chapter 2. And after they escape, he would be showing her the way to the Endless Forest. And he would teach her Ether and High Potion. And he's going to teach her one more lesson before it's all said and done. And that lesson is going to be, he's going to teach her about the old... Because he is going to fall in battle, and it's going to be the first character to illustrate that if you lose a unit, that unit is gone and they're not coming back. So this Toma number 3 already has had his children. He must have, because this is his last day. He's going to die on the bridge. And that's going to teach us about permadeath. And every time I talk about permadeath, I feel obliged to mention that this is a different style game. So it's not a traditional RPG, it's like a... RPG meets roguelike. It's made to be replayed. So I should just stop talking about permadeath if I'm gonna always have to explain that it's not like Chrono Trigger. More like an arcade game, but also an arcade game that you could play for infinity if you wanted to keep your certain game going. Please see previous broadcasts for an in-depth explanation of that. But I will be compiling everything, and my plan is to release the final video on August 22nd, which would be the North American release of Chrono Trigger's 30th. So the whole project will be finished by then, and all of my info will be shared. And if anyone who has any sort of ability to make this a reality, legally, hopefully Armor Project or Square Enix will see this and call me. That would be fantastic. We need a proper sequel to Chrono Trigger, just to wrap up the loose ends and make Chrono Cross make sense. If you never made Chrono Cross, we would not need Chrono Break. It just has to finish it off. Chrono Cross left too much unanswered. And it would just be a shame not to bring the combat mechanics of Chrono Trigger back to a modern age with all of this, like, map stuff. You got a party out in the map, and you just call for help. And then you got your boy, Frog, and whoever getting dropped off and coming to assist your players, and then suddenly you've got a four party fight, or a 4-person fight happening. Because it was 2 and 2. And then they joined up. Sick. Alright, so now we're continuing with this. Oh, this is going to be the weapons. Hold on. Before we get on to the last thing. I guess that looks kind of goofy now, so I'll just do this. We only want... There we go. And there we go. So here's your list of everyone and what weapons they use. Weapon. Back to this one for a second. See that knife? So, she's got knife. You gotta stay true to the inspiration. Okay. So that takes care of Guru Luca. She's got knife and also gun. Magus, alternate Magus, and Surge. I think it's okay to combine, to consolidate Magus and Surge's weapons, right? Because Surge has very Magus-like weapons. A swallow and a scythe. Never heard of a swallow before. So I think it would also be cool to kind of solidify their weird quasi connection. You know, they both have this weird relationship with Shala. Anyway, so they both have that. And then classics all the way around. See, Cyrus has got a sword like Frog. Then Marl knows how to use katana now. All the originals. Old Chrono knows how to use guns because he grew up in the, like the Wild Wild West era. Gunpowder and smoke, a century after the Day of Lavos. So Dalton caused the Day of Lavos to come at 900. A century after the Day of Lavos, a handful of survivors fight over they fight over resources in a desolate world of ruin. World of ruin, eh? So there's some terminology being lifted from Final Fantasy VI also. Nations have been replaced by roving tribal territories. And then I just go ahead and proceed to show you exactly where the tribing territories have their national borders. But anyway, the main ones are the Mystics. Their ancient alliance with the demi-humans of El Nido served them well after the Day of Fire. One thing I just want to point out is how cool it is that a third Chrono Trigger game would give us a chance to see how El Nido would be, what it would be like in the Chrono Trigger verse. Because, when Chrono Trigger happened, obviously the events of Chrono Trigger made it so that one day El Nido was formed. But it would be so cool to see El Nido in the Chrono Trigger world. Like, for instance, this one... let's just continue for a minute. There should be a map somewhere. Octobino's up here in the north. Octobino's up here in the north. Fierce warriors live in the castle ruins in northern Zeon. No one knows the origin of their blood feud with Dragon Tank. And that's like your squad in a traditional playthrough. You might not make it into Dragon Tank. The ideal timeline, you do, I suppose. Depends what your definition of ideal is. But however you want to play it, you can either be in Dragon Tank or you form your own band called Orphan, or you can go to you can join Dorino, but you cannot join Octobino, and you cannot join. I never thought about that. Maybe you can join Octobino. That'd be weird. Huh. Something to think about. Malabranch, the children of poor remain aggressive and pious disciples of the Dragon Emperor. So, Dalton, like I said, caused the new Day of Lavos in 900. And now in 1020, everyone kind of has their mythology based around Dalton, who was called the Divine Dragon King, Divine Dragon Emperor. Because the reason he ended up being called that is because I needed a reason for the Divine Dragon Falls to be called that. And it was like Dalton went there to try and steal the elements. And in doing so, he christened the area after himself. So that's why I thought a good reason why the Divine Dragon Falls would be called that. Because it would just be an example of, you know, Dalton like putting his own stamp on the world by calling it the Divine Dragon Falls. Because he's just egotistical like that. For instance, here's another example. You could see here, this was once called sewer access, and this was once called sewer access, but now they are called Dalton. He just named one after himself. It would be like a little community. And Zeal, which he just named after his old, you know, spot where he used to live. So the two sewer access things in the Dalton 2300 have changed their names into Dalton and Zeal. Oh, and here's El Nido down here. And I was thinking about a phrase that I don't want people to get mad at me for introducing into the lexicon. But imagine El Nido. That's right, my friends. El Nido. Just like all the other domes in the future. It would only be El Nido in 2300, but I'm not even gonna tempt fate with that. I don't even want to pretend like El Nido could be a phrase that people say. But I am kind of curious where my... Never mind. Okay, let's restart. Let's go back to the beginning. Continue on with discussing the Poyozo steak. Oops. I did a transition and then I forgot to move. Okay. That's all good. This one is... We're not coming back to this one today. Okay, here's the Poyozo steak. Fantastic. So where were we? We were doing... Are we talking about chapter 2? Or this chapter 1? Chapter 2 with Toma on the train? I'm going to crank the music again. Or it's tight. Go back to here. Okay, sick. Prepare yourself for Sonic. Amazing Sonic. Amazing music. I don't know what I'm saying. Prepare yourself, my friends. Okay, this is the shot we're doing today. We will continue discussing the movie. But we're going to come back to this and finish with this one today. And that's why we had this up earlier, because we're going to need this. Let me just throw it up now while we got a chance. Perfect. Okay. And he's going to be having quite a day. You know what? That one looks a little bit too wild-eyed for now. Keep him down here. Alrighty. And you know who's not going to be... Never mind. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's continue. So this would be Chapter 3, Heart of Dorino. Here we go. I'm sure this is what we're looking for. Number 3, Heart of Dorino. So basically, in part 2, you meet up with the time egg included instructions to find Robo. So when Marl got to 700, she started looking for Robo. And when she found Robo, she also found him being guarded at Fiona's shrine by Frog, the old frog they were talking about. He's like 100 years old now. So he's way more versed in combat maneuver. And I think we should really lean into his jumping abilities. You know, in combat on the map, he should be really like an aggressive character who can jump. Like takes point, jumps onto enemies quickly. We're going to get to that in a minute. And then can also jump out of danger. But anyway, so that's what happened in the Endless Forest. Then they went to Dorino. They're trying to catch a ferry to El Nido. Here we go. So she finds the shrine. Frog in there. Old friends reunited again. Torn apart too soon. So this is when they're about to get on the ferry to El Nido. Because Robo has directions to go to El Nido. And when they activate him, when they wake him up, he's like, Lucas says to go here. So they're going to El Nido, but then Dalton's forces show up and Frog stays behind to defend them, so they get separated, as you see here. Thankfully, his amazing abilities allowed these two to get away, Robo and Marl. They got to El Nido. Then they got chased by this thing that I'll explain later, and then Ayla came in and saved the day. And you got to see how you can fight with many more than 3 people, because she brought all of her friends. All right, so now you're at the end of time, and that's what this is all about. I think you can choose. We did the Where Dragons Sleep. That's in El Nido. And then, because in 700, all the dragons would be sleeping. And you can wake up the green dragon and have like a very hard boss battle, Omega Weapon style early game boss battle if you want. Which affects some stuff later, which is related to affecting this. Sorry, I lost my pointer. Let's say that you're in 700. Okay, at this point now you're grinding to face the Vision Serpent, okay? But while you're grinding, you can go to Gaia's Navel in 700. And what you have there is, during this time in El Nido's history, the green dragon sleeps. Wake him up from his nap to practice your skills. So you can have like a really hard boss fight here. And let's say that you beat him. This is really getting ahead of myself, but the thing we were talking about yesterday with the warring dyad.
Is this the land of the
Which is also, lifted from Final Fantasy VI. This is the warring dyad. So, like Shala's crew. Oh, here. So if you happen to beat the green dragon in the early game, it will significantly tilt the scales towards fate in this game here. Just a thought. Just a thought. I'm getting way down the road here. But we continue. Let's get this one should be done. Right? What's going on here? Oh. Right, you can choose those. Ooh. All right, I figured it out. I know what the solution is. It's this. Sorry, didn't mean to do the singing. And then that. Wow, that's not really readable. All right, so we did number 1, we did number 2, and we did number 3, and we did number 4. And now you're at the end of time, and you can choose which one you want to do. 2 time zones hold 3 recruitable wielders of the Masamune. So, you can do some side questises. That's a Final Fantasy VI background there, the scary bridge. Gunpowder and smoke, we already kind of saw a little bit today. So if you're pardon me, if you're going in for Chrono during this time, keep in mind this is not our Chrono. This is old Chrono who grew up in a world that had already seen the Day of Lavos. Nicknamed the Steel Shade, although it's not confirmed he's actually the Steel Shade that we know from DS. What would Chrono be like if he grew up 100 years after the Day of Lavos? This version shows how he could become much different under darkened circumstances, longing for a freedom beyond the hell he was born into. You have the gross orange horizon. This would actually be more like 2300, I suppose. You know, like if the original Day of Lavos happened in basically 2000, 1999, then it was only 300 years until you got there in 2300, and it was pretty, the landscape was pretty messed up. So you'd actually imagine that if it was in 900 AD and you arrived in 1020, it would actually be more messed up. But we're going to go with 1020 AD. Nature has reclaimed it. Like 1020 AD does not look like the terrible. We're going to just hope that 2300 AD after the Day of Lavos and Chrono Trigger looked that bad for many other reasons, not just Lavos. The modern day mystics are not true mystics. They took the name because of its historical significance in their region. People of the present, that's 1020, worship a heroic emperor who united the world before perishing in a day of fire. Whew, heavy. They're talking about Dalton there. Some people think he's heroic. Most people think he's a hero because of the legends of, Dalton. But not everyone. It's not, you know, Dorino doesn't like him. Old Chrono is a dual weapon type. The Steel Shade can use guns, but he is not yet magically powered. Don't forget that. And then a potential quote that Luca would say. I don't know why I put that. All right, and then during El Nido was sort of protected by fate during the apocalypse, so they had a rough time, but not as rough as the rest of the world. So Surge is in there, and you can find him by playing Scale of the Komodo. Song of the Komodo. His side quest is called Song of the Komodo, and this is teaching you about the multiple arbiters. Finally, we get a chance to control two parties. Okay. So you've got Marl, she's an arbiter, and also Surge is an arbiter. So, this is your first chance to control two parties at the same time, and the mechanic would be to, basically catch these Komodo pups so that you'll get the equivalent of, Komodo scales are essentially experience tabs. So you can level up pretty quickly if you come in here, which just helps to push, why you would go in for Surge. There's a story reason as well as a practical reason. This way we can force the player who's totally free to choose the story choices we want by leading, carrots, certain areas. Because you got to think, as the designer or as I don't know, as a person who wants to see the best ending, you're going to want people to go recruit Surge. So there's incentives for doing that. And then you've got all these other characters who are your guests. So this teaches you how to fight with a bunch of guests, which is a modified, it's the Final Fantasy 12 Gambit system modified and simplified, excuse me. Fight the Steel Shade to a standstill to prove your worthiness and become part of Dragon Tank. So if you do that, then, Chrono, as well as all of these, join you as guests. So you're still playing just, Robo, Marl, and maybe a third, but now you have all these guests as well. And if you want Chrono to join you full time, then you need to defeat Octobino and reclaim Guardia Castle, the ruins of Guardia Castle. Which ties into Chrono's whole thing because he's, in one timeline, he's like the Prince of Guardia. So you go in there and what's Melchior doing in 1020 AD? Flung from the Ocean Palace disaster into this bleak timeline, Melchior is once again selling weapons. His selection of Dreamstone equipment and elements may be the key to outfitting the party for an early win against the Vision Serpent. He lives among the mystics, monitoring the suspicious flow of Lavos spawn from the area of what was once Medina. Some call it funky cold Medina. Melchior knew Dalton in antiquity, and he's smart enough to guess what happened to the world. So he kind of knows from all the divine dragon legends and stuff. Melchior kind of knows when he hears that Emperor Dalton started doing stuff, he kind of knows that who he's dealing with here. While the mystics believe the Dragon King destroyed the world to purify it, that's like the people who are in hold on. History of the time before the calamity, which would be the new day of Lavos in 900, survived in stories passed down over the generations. Every culture has their own myth about the divine dragon and the day of fire, though some versions are closer to the truth than others, which is what we were just talking about. So here you have, while the mystics believe the Dragon King destroyed the world to purify it, Melchior's suspicions are closer to the truth. Dalton woke Labos, which he did by having an overpowered mammon machine that kind of like took too much energy. Speaking of which, if you go to 1020 or 2300, you can charge your pendant from the, very slowly, mind you. It's not a full pendant charge. It's a crappy one. You can charge it from the mammon machine still sitting there. Oh yeah, here we go. Traveling through Xenon with Dragon Tank raises an invisible affinity gauge. After the gauge reaches a certain level, Pierre reveals his plan to reclaim the castle ruins from Octobino. So then you would have old Chrono join as a regular guest. Or as a regular party member. If you defeat that. All right. I think we have covered this. So you could choose to go get Chrono, you can choose to get Surge, and then this is finally what we're getting to today. That's what this one's all about. Not that one. Wait, what is this one? I don't know if we finished it. Did we? Frog in the Dalton timeline. It's pretty much the same material, just repeated with different artwork. The Raging Spaniard. Responsible for this very cool picture of Frog, and Alguien Illustra for this one on the right. But back to what happened. Uh-oh, hold on. I messed up. Pause. Okay. Back to this part where they separate. Frog protects them, and then they leave, right? But what happens to Frog? Our boy fights so many Porian troops that he becomes Korepsi. He's been corrupted by the Masamune. By the time you get back, that's what, pardon me. That's what this one is. Angels lose their way. So that's what the title comes from. You see, oh, and this one was also inspired by an excellent illustration. El Ramo. elramo.com. So he gets corrupted by the Masamune. And so that's why, that brings me to, because he, yeah, we can read. He basically fought so hard to protect you that the Masamune got corrupted by all the blood. The figure who defeated Cedric is none other than Frog. After his heroic stand in Dorino, Frog slayed so many Porians that the Masamune was drenched in enough blood to be corrupted. If the player engages him, they will have a difficult battle in which they are game overed, or they defeat him and take the corrupted Masamune. You do not want to engage corrupted Frog without an Einlanzer to cleanse the blade. If you do that, you're going to have an awful outcome. You're either going to get beat, or you are going to have to unalive Frog. And we don't want either of those. So we're going to say make sure you bring a Masamune, Einlanzer to make sure you do. What am I trying to say here? Make sure you uncorrupt the blade, which is what we see here. Boom. All right, I want to just point out something real quick. Once you get back to this point and you're choosing to do this in the end of time, a little bit of time has slipped by. So you just left 700, and if you go back, then you know, enough time has passed that Frog has been corrupted, and he's been corrupted for months or whatever, weeks, I don't know. Some amount of time, weeks or months, has gone by. And then this is a little bit, I don't really get it, but if you go back to the present, you're actually slipping 20 years into the future. So I do have a couple of reasons to explain that related to anti-annihilation energy, but right now it's just kind of like an eyebrow-raising component of the plot. But you should know that some time has passed since you left both of these time zones to get here to this point and return to them. And so that's why Frog has been corrupted, and this has been happening for weeks because you sort of have been gone for weeks. Which is kind of like the same vibe as in Chrono Trigger when Magus gets to Zeal way before you, even though you pretty much kind of go there. You kind of go through the time gate right after he does, but yet he's been there weeks by the time that he's become the prophet and everything. So he had kind of a really big head start. All right, let's continue. Cleanse the blade. A noble swordsman has lost the path. Find the Einlanzer and cleanse the curse. Or don't. Take the cursed blade for your own and wield its power. A corrupted Masamune depletes health in exchange for berserk status. So berserk status is super strong and not easy to come by in this game, at least during the the opening part. So it's valuable to have a corrupted Masamune if you're trying to just crush some bosses, or imagine you go into you want to like push into a part of the map. You just give one of these corrupted Masamunes to a character and they're definitely going to crush some enemies, even though they're losing their soul. But you can deal with that later. Build your party's strength for the challenge ahead. You want to beat the Vision Serpent. Many will not survive their first encounter. That's fine. That's like basically the Battle of Zeal. You'll just have to restart back to the Fall of Guardia if you lose Vision Serpent. And that's kind of how it's designed. Or you just go back and do it again. Okay, I think we've seen enough of that to know what's going on with Poyozo's stake. So let's go back to that now. And continue with the music. All right. And after we talk about the parts of this video we haven't covered yet, then we're going to end the broadcast. Okay, we did this. Got into here. Chapter 3, we're going to do that later. I might do that for tomorrow since I've been talking already for an hour and a half. That's a lot. Okay, we have just a general introduction to the party badges when you're going to dispatch parties. So this is the party that you're going to have in the Moral Start tutorial chapter. That's why you see that there. That was a glimmer of marking a lava shell. So you're traveling with Dragon Tank and you defeat a Lavos spawn, then you can mark its shell. You can tag its shell. And this is just a glimmer of that. But you can see this would be if you take the side quest to hang out with Dragon Tank in 1020 and level up that way. this is to show the world conquest mechanic. So, like I was mentioning, everything before chapter 7 is going to be everything before the break is going to be tutorial. The break is sort of the end game. This is really where you would spend 99% of your time playing the game. This is all tutorial. Excuse me, didn't mean for that to happen. So what was I saying? So you're just trying to get through 6 into 7, and that's what this represents. Oh. So what that means is Gunpowder and Smoke 5B, should you choose to accept your mission, is going to teach you about the end game mechanic of maintaining parts of the map. So this is a really small, it's kind of an abbreviated version of that. So you see that you have these areas and you fulfill certain conditions to ally them with the dragon tank. For instance, you know, the ruins of the Black Omen. Whoever controls this fortress controls the world, basically. The ancient seat of the divine dragon king's power is now a holy site warred over by all nations. By the time the player arrives, it has long been held by the mystics. Okay, so if you want to hold the omen, hold the world. Essentially, you can get the mystics to become dragon tank, or to, you know, sort of like pledge allegiance to you. You know, unite the world. From certain conditions. For Octobino, you have to claim the throne in the castle ruins. For Bullfrog, you have to capture the Sunstone from the Mystics. For the Mystics, you have to take control of the Omen. For Dorino, I don't know. I think these two bottom ones might be wrong. But it would be something like this. All right, so that's what this part is illustrating. So you'll notice that the Omen turns red before the Mystic's land turns red. Okay, actually, that follows the conditions. First, you see the first one to turn red is the dragon tank. Excuse me, Sunstone Island or whatever. I don't know what it's called, the Sun Keep. And so once you get that one, then watch Dorino. Sorry, I have 2 pointers on the screen, but watch Bullfrog down here. It's called Bullfrog because that was an unused Chrono Trigger enemy, but also because it's like Cyrus's hometown and he's kind of related to Frog. But this one now changes to the dragon tank because you got the Sunstone, and then you come over here to the Omen, beat that, and so then the Mystics ally, and these two are left unconcluded at the moment. But this is a quick way to, and you see Alnido is unaffiliated. They're in isolation, so they don't care about any of what's going on there. They'll never be dragon tank. They'll never be mystic. They're just unaffiliated. They're protected by I don't know actually what's going on with them right now. I have to think about that a second. Okay. Now this DC Game Tech did the background here. They used Unreal Engine to render the Black Omen, so that's why their name DC Game Tech is down here. They're not affiliated with this project any other way. In fact, I didn't even ask them for permission to use this. I just give them the credit to make sure that everyone knows that they're responsible for this amazing Black Omen render that we're seeing now. And actually, Bulby is responsible for the logo that you just saw. Bulby's responsible for a few awesome things that I used. But this logo was, I added the 2, but this was actually originally Bulby's thing too. He made Chrono Trigger into 8. He likes to make Chrono Trigger stuff into 8-bit. So that's where this came from. All right, so this sequence is meant to show that we're entering the brand new world. This is all stuff we know. This is all Chrono Trigger style, except for this. This is kind of new and stuff. But anyway, you're entering the break now. And so we have the characters running in the traditional way, and then they enter, this world I'm about to show you. Now you're on the overworld, which is just like sort of, I kind of imagine these are two time zones happening here. Like you have Luca, this shaded image of this shadowy image of Luca and Robo here. So essentially Chrono is like walking here, but then this portion contains a previous event that's happening. If he crossed through there, would he cross into it? Is it layered? I'm not really sure how I feel about it yet. But like, you've got the overworld. It's kind of something like this. It could be a little bit nicer looking than that, but that would be like the 8-bit version or the classic version. What I really wanted to show, I think it's this one. Oh yeah. So imagine you're like Chrono, you're walking down through the map and you're approaching this cloud, okay, that's just hovering over the map. But then when you get close to it, you see that it's actually, that cloud represents a passageway to some other dimension or time zone equivalent, which would essentially just be like a dungeon. And you would switch from this mode to an almost infinite dungeon that would be kind of like this. I don't know, something like that. But sorry about that noise. But I really meant is you would switch into this kind of style dungeon. Okay. Let's continue. So this is the first major shot of the overworld. The break. Okay. And then you've got this overlay showing us that this is a zone that equates essentially to 4S and 588 AD, which would be the Knights of the Square Table and this whole saga with this big boy. So if you go into the Chorus 588 analog, you're ending up doing some kind of, like Frog King-y kind of thing. Cyrus Frog King stuff. And then up here it's just an example. And then up here it says Site A, stable. And whatever that means, your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea what stable means, but I like the sound of it. It's like it could be potentially unstable. You could have a site that's unstable. Like I know, for instance, site has been used already here. You have Monster Spring, site A. So I think you kind of like set up your own sites. Similar to this. Got to do your furniture, I suppose. Shala using her psychic powers to do the furniture. So that's site C. That's monsters. So that's another time where the site lingo has appeared. Site C. Site C has a nice hutch with a fireplace, and this party is Shala, Torque, and Luca. Okay, let's continue this part, man. Okay, a couple techs here. I think we already talked about this, but I think it's cool to show the idea of a lot of back and forth between this style, which would be, your on the ground combat style, and the overworld style. And even so much so that if you're casting Aura at level 99, you have, that's only at 40, and you can see there's sparkles further enough that they would be completely outside of this range. She's casting the spell now. This is level 10. And then you can see level 30, it's kind of at the boundaries. At least it's by the boundaries in the upper part over here. Down here, it's not really in the boundaries. But anyway, by the time you get to level 40, it would be strong enough that it would appear even like this. And then by 99, so if you train up Aura, if you use Aura when you're level 99, it's going to cover, like she's almost curing into the next county. But that's just a thought. And then see, you have Robo up here, and he's not being healed. But he would have a party up there. So it would kind of look like you'd have Marl, Demon King, Magus, and Custer down here. And then, I don't know, you'd have a party with Robo up there. Huh. Well, shucks. Okay. Let's continue on. This would be a dual tech between Shala and Magus. That was requested on Reddit. Hello. Found this Reddit post. Design any character as if they were. Yeah, if you're watching this and you post something on Reddit, I can try to make it for you, but these were requests that people had for certain texts. that they imagined. I'm pretty sure that Bone Needle from yesterday's stream was imagined on Reddit. But, you know, there's the search for resonance and the collective unconscious. So if someone has an idea strong enough to voice it, and then you help that idea along. Like, I didn't have any idea what Cyrus's texts were for this, but someone had an idea, they voiced it. I'm going to take that and run with it, and hopefully, you know, someone with some authority to make this happen will see that and it'll resonate, because hopefully we both pulled everyone who worked on this, including all the artists and stuff. I'm trying to synthesize our collective unconscious imagination of what this project would look like. So I'm really not so much generating the ideas as just collecting the ideas. That way, it was dreamed up by everyone. That is the theory, at least. But here we get to the shallow ones. And so you had Umbra. This is the old version of it. I tricked it out a little bit. And then she's got Bond down there. She's got a triple tech called Bond. And due to sort of like lack of assets, and also so I don't spend my whole life on this project, I kind of simplified that one. That one's like a very zen single heart glowing amidst a neutron star of healing energy, I imagine. I don't know. I don't really know how to imagine Bond. But then this one was described pretty well. I think this one. The person had this idea for Cyrus's one. Dismantle. Bond. Back to Bond. What other ones did we have? There's Bond. Oh, some kid techs. See. She's a fire type. So she's got like the flame saber style stuff. And also, I think there's a representation of, oh yeah, is she fire or is she shadow? Because, oh, that's right, because she is Shala's clone, right? So she's either fire or she's shadow. Could be either. Could be either. Even though her innate element in Chrono Cross is fire, her innate color, I'm not totally convinced that that means that she would have to be a fire type. No one in Chrono Cross met Specchio, so we don't have any evidence. But if she was a shadow type, then this move which got removed, or this weapon that got removed from the game, the dark saber, could actually become a tech. And she's doing like the dark saber. And I don't know if you noticed, but in this case, it would be like a saber move that is a triple tech. Like maybe dark saber's so crazy that you actually need all three. You need Magus and Kid to throw the dark onto the blade and then let Chrono do it. So a saber charged move that is a triple tech, I think, is kind of a cool idea too. And dark saber could be that. Okay, continuing on with the tunes. For this little part with the Chrono Altar, I liked, I'm not really sure, I just like the idea of this Luminaire taking up the whole screen and this kind of Final Fantasy VI-esque party compilation. I like that. And then this Lavos materializing with the two of them down there. It's beyond what even I could imagine what was happening there. But it's kind of dark and mysterious. And so this one is just for the darkness and the mystery of what this game could be. You got the two parties being composed. You're going to send these three out and then these three out. And now this one is connected. This one, all right, so watch this. I worked hard on this. I want to show show it off. So that's our first party that we had on the bottom. Don't forget. Here you go. Oh, no, that ruined it. The first party on the bottom. Nadia, Robo, Chrono. And the top, Ayla, Frog, Luca. There they are walking, and look at this. We're familiar with this. This is Chrono Trigger. We've seen this before, no problem. Oh, boom. Perfect. This is the essence of what we want. Map traversing, multi-party people out there. Suddenly you bump into the other party coming up your way, and you get like working together, which is what this is supposed to represent. This would be like a zoom in, then everyone's fighting together. On this side, you have this party, you know, and on this side, you have this party, but they would ever come closer and closer, and it would be amazing. And the actual characters who are in these scenes do not line up with the parties as they have been assigned. There's only, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just to get the point across. All right, I just gotta like let that epoch drop happen again. Let's just go back to this part of the song. It's so cool. Okay, we talked about this already. And the previous part was just a long scroll of all the characters. Which we'll get another one of those in a minute. Wait, My cool stuff got in the way. This is an important scene. Okay, we saw that. So once again, let's say that this Chrono was in a bit of trouble. You're like in a party by yourself, just Chrono. And so you call for the Epoch to assist you. Doesn't look like he was in trouble, but let's pretend he was. Help me, help me. Then you go to this menu and you can see that there's other, you've got others of your squad in other parts of the globe. There's even one down there. That one down there, I imagine she's like this. I don't know. I'll talk about her later. Hold on, I got this. Okay. So here's the squad. And here you go. She's like this kid who wears a hat. It's way too big. So she wears a big hat. He wears a hat too. Fabian has Gasper's hat. This is Victor with his big old eyes. Custer, Torque with his weird haunting reptite girl. Bob with his glasses. There's a corrupted Masamune laying on the ground. That probably shouldn't be there. Migo and Gigi. Way too small. Way too small. Raikou up here. Then, of course, you got Leah. Very old now. So that's who you got. You got Custer's party over here, Kino's party over here, and the Sunkeep sales party down there. But the focus on this clip is that Chrono called for a pickup, and he requests evacuation to the Denadaro Mountains, where he's going to rendezvous with Marl and Robo. Which would all be, this would be like a map you enter into, and you can just move around the map quickly if you've got an Epoch active in teleporters and stuff, which I'll get into later. That one, I wanted to illustrate how the X strike, such an iconic move, also had Robo and Isla are there to throw in Chrono Trigger. They have their own addition to the X strike where they make it 3-dimensional. Boom. So that's like a triple X strike. Boom. They even do the X strike animation and then just add a little extra. So that's something cool to remember. Okay, this is all about party stuff. This is what it looks like walking around the map. You've sent out a party with Frog on auto. You switch on your menu to see more information. And there's Bob and Frog here together, which implies maybe that was a 3-person party that got sent out to AutoQuest and only 2 came back. So that's a sad sight to see, but it could happen. Okay, let's talk about this shot. There's a lot to unpack here. So first, we've got Ayla and Kino also being auto-quested on their dispatch. And then, if you'll notice down here that Magus is like reaching out for Shala, and then he fades away. Watch this. Oh, he faded away. You have Jado teaching Peta how to do aura to once again highlight the person-to-person tech sharing. And then over here, you see that Cyrus is also fading out. That's an important one to remember. That's an important one to remember. And then above here, we have this Magus would actually be Demon King Magus because the other Magus faded out. And I'll explain why in a minute. So anyway, this one is going to teach Torque Dark Matter. And dark matter is like magical, so it has a star. And so I might hear you saying like, well, if Torque is a caveman, why can he do magic? He should not have star tech because that's like post-Lavos tech. And it's because the person who's actually going to cast dark matter is not the caveman, but his like creepy ghost haunter hang-on reptite thing that can actually do magic. He's the only caveman to have this be haunted by this magic wielding thing. But it makes him unique. That's Torque. Okay, sick, right? I hope you heard that when original Chrono jumped out of the epoch and crossed blades with old Chrono. Let's watch for that again. Oh, but also don't forget that before that happens, Robo fades out of existence. Okay, Robo faded out of existence. Here comes the epoch. Okay, Kid fades into existence, and now notice who you have up here. You have Cyrus who faded out. This is a different version of Cyrus. Then you have these guys, they're just up there. I don't know what they're doing. But you also have this gravestone, okay, with a Tropos next to it. And then you have Surge with his weird, vision, seeing the world change to a different world where Robo and Atropos are together. There's no grave. There's only them sitting together. It's like to illustrate the possibilities. And then here we have our final sort of demonstration of map movement with multiple parties. They're all going 3 separate directions. Hold on, I got to do something for this one. We have to do a shot for the final video. This one. All right. So they've got the epoch, as you can see by their tag. So it would be like, that's not on yet. So these parties are splitting up. Okay, then you see this one stop moving up here. And that would be them booting up the epoch. Like, zzz. Oh. Oh man, I messed that up. It was supposed to illustrate them arriving in another dimension. I know it's the epoch, but imagine that Luca tricks out the epoch with the frozen flame so that it can travel trans-dimensionally. So this is sort of late game stuff here, but that's what that's supposed to illustrate. I wanted them to be taking off in the epoch. Hold on, let's just get that in here for fun. Whee! And then okay, perfect. So they landed in, this is actually another world. Designation Dimension 2. So that's where they landed, all right? And then they just kind of explore a little bit further. But then we switch back to World 1 that we just left, and you see Shala's party. All right, I hope you guys got that. I'll have to touch it up a little bit later. But at that last moment, you see Shala's party is looking a little bit rough or something. They get into danger, they call for help, and then from across dimension, I don't know. I don't know how you could call for help across dimension, but at any rate, Kid's team decides to show up at that moment from another world. And then they come down and help the party out. They help them out, which is the whole essence of the party mechanics on the overworld in this theoretical version of Chrono Break. Thanks for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.